Welcome everyone to Unsheathed Sword Reviews. I'm Vic.
I'm John.
And today we're going to bring you our official review of the Swordier 16A Longsword. So, this is the Swordier SWMZ-1001, the upgraded 16A. John, how did this come about?
Well, it's funny you ask that, Victor, because some time ago, you probably, actually, those of you who are, kind of conversant in the sword community here have probably seen quite a few Swordier swords out, having been reviewed by a bunch of other folks, including Alientude, Delatrex Swords, to name a few folks that we've collaborated with in the past. So we recently reached out to Alex at Swordier and just asked him, hey, do you have any other models that you'd like to get some extra exposure for? And sure enough, he did. And he was kind enough to send us both this Type 16A inspired sword and also a Type 14 inspired arming sword, which you can check out the review. The link is below in the description. So, so he was kind enough to send them to us. So it's worth noting we did not spend our own money on these, but we are going to approach the review just as if we did.
Yep.
So, yeah. Probably one other thing worth mentioning, though, huh, Vic?
Yeah, so another thing that we should probably bring up, again, if you've been paying attention to anything going on in the sword community on the internets, you've probably seen that there were some allegations going on involving Swordier and involving Matt Easton, and we're not going to get into too many details as to all of that. We will, however, be putting links to these videos in the description below so you could educate yourself and find out all the information that you want. But basically, there is an allegation involving possible IP theft, back and forth between Swordier and Matt Easton. So we just need you guys to be aware of those because, as we've talked about before, any kind of issue that might come along with the manufacturer is something you guys have the right to know and then decide if this is a company that you want to be giving your money to or not. Regardless, that decision is up to you. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, again, just educate yourself and make a decision that best suits you and your values and morals. Yep.
Regardless, though, we do have a sword in front of us to review, and despite anything that happens with all of that, there are some people that just want to get a really good sword at an affordable price.
And we're going to let you know whether this sword accomplishes that or not.
Yep. So, loosely based off of 16A is what I would say. That's how I would word that.
I said inspired.
Yeah. So what we do have here is a long sword, obviously. And I will say, if you watch, say, Kyle Alientude's videos of some of the earliest Swordier long swords that they made, they were essentially longsword hilts with a Jan blade. And I will say, based on looking at the progress that they have made on his videos and what we have here, this is not a Jan blade. So, they've gotten better in that regard.
Absolutely.
Still wouldn't quite call it a 16A, but yeah, close enough. But in terms of aesthetics and fit and finish, John, what do you think?
I think that they made some interesting choices aesthetically on this sword, and I'm kind of here for it, but it's definitely different than I think anything that you would see elsewhere. The leather is very shiny.
Yeah.
It's very, very shiny, and that's sort of ostentation on its own, and then to top that off, they have this really contrasting stitching color with a very prominent X-stitched pattern down the side of the sword. I like the contrast. I like how it looks. To me, it's saying, this is a lower end sword, and we're not going to try to hide that. We're not going to try to make the stitches tiny and perfect. We're going to make it serviceable but visible. And I like leaning into the form follows function thing. So I like that. It also, interestingly, at this price point particularly, has a really, I think, pretty attractive wire wrap grip at the bottom. But again, it's different than other wire wraps that I've seen because it does look almost more white than silver. So I think that all of those things together make a very interesting sort of choice that they made because this is a very unique looking sword. It doesn't look like any other sword that you're going to find anywhere else. And, I think the fishtail pommel is really nice. I think that, like most fishtail pommels that are low to mid-range, the peen doesn't look as good as it does as it would on like a scent stopper or a wheel pommel because it's just harder to do well. Like your dark sword where that ended up breaking off at the peen. But yeah, I think aesthetically it's interesting. It's pretty well done. The quillions are actually quite rounded. They're not sharp.
Yeah,
they're pretty well chamfered. So yeah, I like the fit and finish on this sword for its price point. And again, it's $329. So yeah, I think at that price point, not a lot to complain about fit and finish wise.
Yeah, I think as a whole, overall, the fit and finish is very, very good, especially considering the price. And I do appreciate that they're going for certain things that you don't always see at this price point. Like John said, the wire wrap. I've never seen a wire wrap on a sword in this price point.
Below $500.
Yeah. However, like John said, it doesn't look so much in person. Like, it definitely looks like metal. Definitely has a silverish color to it. In photographs, though, it looks white. So, like, it photographs really weird. It's definitely a different type of metal, I think, than the guard and pommel, which, just FYI, the guard and pommel are stainless steel, as are the Type 14, which is really, really cool. So it does have a wire wrap. Looks a little weird in terms of the color. Also doesn't have the studs that some high-end makers have with their, wire wraps, but still looks really, really good. But I do think there's a lot of contrast going on because, like John said, there is really, really shiny leather, which on its own, I don't really like the look of the shiny faux leather. It reminds me of cheap windlass swords. However, I love the color. It's a really, really deep, dark, like reddish, oxbloody thing. The color looks fantastic. I genuinely do like the cross stitching that it has running down the length of the grip. Again, not my favorite. I like, nice leather cord wrap is what I prefer, but this doesn't look bad. You can feel it when you have it in your hand. It doesn't feel bad. In fact, it kind of helps index depending on what way you're holding it.
I was going to say that, yeah.
That said, though, it also has a very flamboyant fishtail pommel, right? There are less crazy looking fishtail pommels. This one is pretty flamboyant. So, like, that's with the wrapping, with the stitching, with it has a lot going on. Like they were just throwing like everything they could at this, and like I appreciate the effort. And technically, this is a feature rich hilt.
This is the upgraded version. Victor.
It's a lot going on though. Also, the guard like swells in dimension. Also, you know what I mean. It's not just a solid bar. So I like that. I appreciate this as like a showcase of what they can do.
Generally speaking, I like a reductionist aesthetic to begin with. Something about this though, I don't know, I kind of like it. It feels like something like obviously the time period's off sort of, but like a Lance Connect kind of person would carry
very
this.
Flamboyant,
just like flamboyant and ostentatious. It's kind of fun. I like it.
So moving on to the blade. So in terms of just the aesthetics and looking at it, same thing like we said with the Type 14 is if you just look at it, it just screams medieval longsword to you.
Sword, yeah.
Definitely. Not exactly sure I would call this a Type 16A blade. The fuller is a bit too long, it's a bit too deep. And just the overall profile of it doesn't quite look like a 16A to me. It looks like a weird mix between a 12A and a 16A.
Yeah,
it's kind of what I would think. Again, just looks like medieval European blade, right?
Absolutely.
Which is fine. Like, and again, depending on what's important to you in terms of a budget sword, not being completely historically accurate might bug you, might not. That said, overall, it's a good looking sword. And it feels well made. Nothing's loose. Nothing moves around on you, right? Like the wire wrap surprisingly hasn't come loose at all. That's still pretty sturdy. So yeah, as a package, it's a good looking sword, and for the price, a lot of features. So
I agree, it has a lot of features, and like I think the word striking keeps popping into my mind, and there's just something striking about it, which I think that it also carries through to the scabbard. If you look, the scabbard is made of that same sort of very shiny oxbloody kind of leather, and then it's got the stitching down the side, the same pronounced stitching. And then there's just something about the way the X's are done and the underlay underneath the vinyl or whatever it is. It's just it's kind of a striking scabbard even. It just looks kind of good.
Yeah, again, so the shiny faux leather not my favorite, but like John said, the design, the X here, the way it has the hangers on it for the belts, and this also did come with the belt, unlike the Type 14. I'll show pictures of it. So yeah, it is a handsome scabbard. It has the same kind of stitching, like it matches. Like I appreciate that they had a look, and they're like, we're going all in on this look.
They did,
like really did.
Yep.
And I don't think it's bad at all. Like I wouldn't feel embarrassed wearing this at a Ren fair or anything. You know what I mean? Like especially for the price points.
I think that you would get a lot of compliments on this sword if you were to wear it around, because it does draw attention to itself, and then the first thing you notice is that, oh wow, that's a nice looking sword, and then you notice, wow, it's got a lot of things about it that I don't see everyone else have. So it's kind of nice.
You would probably get a lot of people asking what it is,
yeah,
like where you got it from.
Agreed, absolutely.
So yeah, so aesthetic. I like the aesthetics, despite some nitpicks here and there.
For sure, and again, it's a filter issue. If your filter is you want it to be historically accurate, you're going to be disappointed. But if your filter is you just want a good medieval longsword, that looks like one. It has face validity.
Yeah, like if at a glance you love the look of the sword, then you're not going to be sad. It holds up in that regard.
Just so.
All right, handling.
Handling, I think it's like a tale of two swords here, because the first sword we reviewed from Swordier was one of the better handling swords that I think I've reviewed recently.
Yeah.
And this one is not quite there. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Blade harmonics are tricky, and the longer the blade is, the trickier they are. So that's definitely a thing. But it does strike me that, and you called it really well, that you pretty much have to hit just specifically the sweet spot on this blade, or else you get a lot of energy transfer and you tend to bat things around. So that's the one thing that I've noticed that I don't love about this sword. It feels good in the hand. It swings well. You know, when you pull off a good cut, it'll actually ring a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I do really think that you have a very narrow area that you can cut effectively with this, and everything else is going to get sent down range.
Yeah, so I agree with every point you made there. This sword is somewhat frustrating because, like you said, when you do hit that sweet spot, you pull off a cut like as good as anything, really.
Sure. Yeah, agreed.
And you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to do that over and over and over again. And if, like us, you don't train, you don't study HEMA or anything, so if you're just go out for the fun of it, if this isn't something you're working with and getting better at practicing with every single day, then it's going to be frustrating because you're going to miss the sweet spot a lot, because the sweet spot's also not very big. Like
I think it's very small. Yeah.
And you're going to bat bottles around a lot. Even if you I did pull off like a clean cut and then went for a follow-up cut, if there's not enough mass left because of the lost a little bit of water, then that just bats around. Like I literally was sending bottles and stuff sailing out of my yard the first time I started cutting with this. Which, it feels just about as sharp as the Type 14. So very good sharpness out the box.
That was my first concern. I was like, are there some flat spots on this edge? Like, what's going on? But there aren't.
No. And I think part of it might just be the cross-section, because it does have a very pronounced diamond cross-section at the end here. And if it is going to be a Type 16, it should be a flattened diamond or a hexagonal cross-section. So that, with a super deep fuller, I just think once it gets into a targets, it's just...
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Especially if maybe your edge alignment is just a tiny little bit off. It's just not a forgiving sword is what it boils down to. So
that said, though, if you were gonna practice with it every single day, it would probably make you get a lot better with your edge alignments. But in terms of just taking a fun longsword out to the back, that'll do some of the work for you. This kind of isn't it, despite it being really sharp, which is a little disappointing. Because it actually does feel pretty good to move around. It does feel pretty fine. 3 pounds, 5.7 ounces.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel heavy at all.
It's got decent distal taper. Starts out pretty thick, actually. It's 6.6 millimeters at the base and goes all the way down to 2.6 at the tip.
Yep.
So there's a lot. It's like, by the numbers, it looks like everything should be great with this sword. And this is where people that know more about blade harmonics, like the Angus Trims of the world and Andy's from Delatrex Swords of the world, can probably... crunch the numbers on this.
Figure out why.
But there's definitely something that's not right with the way that this sword processes energy through it. Yeah. And that makes it very, very, very unforgiving in the cuts that you make.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We can't articulate exactly what it is, but like you said, hopefully one of our friends can. But yeah, it's fine if you get that sweet spot.
Sure.
If not, then it's not.
Something's rotten in the state of Denmark otherwise. Yes, absolutely.
So all that said, decent enough cutter, not the best. Aesthetics, certainly going for a thing, aren't they?
Yes.
So what do you think? For $329 this is still incredibly inexpensive in terms of the European sword market for a functional sword package with the leather belts and scabbard. So
yes. I think that would I personally, myself, with my own money, buy this particular sword? Probably not. Because like Victor said, they're going for a thing, and they went for it, and they're still going, I think, actually. But it's not the look that I would pick for myself necessarily. But I will say this, though. I will say that having held and used this sword, I would be very comfortable buying another sword of theirs at this price point, because I would know that if it has a wire wrap, the wire wrap's going to be well executed. I know that if it's going to have full leather, the stitching is going to be solid, and it's not going to move around, and it's going to feel good in my hands. So yes, there's a lot that's good about this. I might not buy this specific one, though.
Yeah, that's a good way to word that. See, like, all the aesthetic things aside, it actually, I do think, is up my alley a little bit more than yours, right? In terms of how flamboyant it is.
Sure, yeah.
So if the handling were better, then I would completely be like, yes, I would buy this sword. But however, like, the little oddities with the hilts, I would immediately look past if this performed like that Type 14 did.
Agreed.
But it doesn't, so because of that, I'm like, no. But I do appreciate the showcase of what they can do, and like John said, the quality of this and the Type 14 lead me to completely say, yes, I would buy something from Swordier. In fact, I've looked at their website. There's a couple swords that I really have my eye on that I'll probably buy because, like, bang for the buck, they definitely seem like they're worth the money.
Right. And again, to echo something we said in the last video, this is a really good sword. And, Swordier in general, it seems like, based on our small sample size, is a good sword for when your friends come over and they're maybe not sword people and they want to cut stuff in the backyard, but you don't want to give them your $1,200 A-trim because you're concerned that they're going to break the blade and then you'll have to, dig a hole and it's going to be a long day. So nobody wants that, right? So this is a good opportunity to give somebody something like this, because if they nick the blade, it's $300. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened.
Exactly.
Right?
Strongly agree. There's definitely, even if you collect high-end swords, there is a place for swords like this for that very reason in your collection, I think.
Completely agree. There's room in my heart for this price point. Right. Definitely.
And if this is the price point you're working with in general, it's cool that you're starting to get like a feature-rich sword in this price range, which that's previously something, like even looking at the Balor Arms stuff, which is a little bit more expensive, you don't get this many features on a sword.
You surely
So
don't.
like that is really impressive, and I dig that a lot. So
yeah, so that's basically all I've got to say about it.
Yeah, stay tuned. We have a couple more reviews coming your way. Eventually down the line, we are probably going to do a comparison with this and a high-end Type 16 that is on the wall behind me. We'll see how this stacks up to the fabled Ansbach and let you know if you get a whole lot more for your money or if it's worth skipping that and going the less expensive route.
So, you could buy 5 of these. For the Ansbach.
And that is a thing we will factor in when we do comparisons of like low to high end stuff like that. That is a thing to think about.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, if you've liked, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications.
Peace.